Hey, welcome to Afton Woodworks. I wanted to update you on a project that I just finished. It's obviously the holiday season and we're all busy making holiday gifts for our loved ones. This year I made something out of fine woodworking. It is it's the December issue of this year, 271. And it's called Coopered Bowls, or Coopered Containers, excuse me. And here you see them next to me if you go to page 35. And here they are in the magazine. So when I saw this, I'm like, well, that's an interesting project. I don't personally have a lathe. I've thought about it, but man, they are messy, right? So I thought this would be an interesting way to make something that looked like a bowl, they call them containers, and really try something different, something that required some precision. And it's interesting because if you look at these, they're stacked, right? And I'll talk about how they stack in a moment, but if you look at this closely, they're called staves. Each piece is a stave, and there's 16 of them, which means in order to form a 360-degree round circle, each one of these angles on each side of them is 11.25 degrees on your table saw. Now that's interesting because I got a new table saw last spring. Some of you might have saw that video, and you know, it seems pretty precise, but I've never really put it to the test. And in the article, it shows I'm cutting, obviously you first you cut to the length, but then you cut to the width. And when you're cutting to the width on both sides, you're tilting your blade 11.25, or in my case, 11.2 degrees. And I thought, well, this will be interesting. And what you do is you lay out all 16 staves and you put a couple pieces of blue painter's tape, and then you bring it together, right? You just pick it up and kind of bring it together and see how it comes together. In the article, they then go to the jointer to kind of just do the final finesse. On the saw stop, I had no issue. It fit perfectly on all three, and I did not have to do that. Now, that does not mean this is not a tedious project. I found this to be very tedious, and towards the end, trying my patience. I always get that way when you kind of come to the end of a project, especially around the finishing side of it. But here, each stave has, you're cutting it to length, right? You're cutting it to width. You're cutting a dado in each one. In this case, I put in I think it's a 1/4 inch piece of masonite, and then some leather. I actually found some leather off of Amazon and spray adhesive that on, and then trimmed it and fitted into that. So that's another cut. And then you cut a cove on the top. Let me come closer. So here you see the cove, okay? And it's a specific cove in the magazine. I went ahead and ordered the white side router bit that they reference, and then a cove on the bottom that's opposite. So the cove is on the outside on the bottom, and then on the inside on the top, and that's what allows it to kind of just nestle together nicely. So I think if I remember right, when I was in the midst of this, it was 12 cuts per stave. In addition, I had to build some jigs. I wanted to build a jig to hold it at the table saw. I wanted to build a jig to route it at the table saw, or at the router table. So very tedious. And then at the end, of course, when I went to finish it, I taped this with blue tape. And I think that was smart, but blue tape on this leathery or this suede was really hard to peel off. I bet you it took me 45 minutes between these three pieces just to peel the tape off. So lessons learned, I used a piece of bamboo. There was a large piece of bamboo at Rockler on sale months ago, and I grabbed it. Didn't know what I was going to do with it, like many of us, right? But I thought, I'll try bamboo. I like the look. Don't get me wrong. I think it's creative and interesting, and probably a talking piece, but it does tear out a lot. So one of the steps that they instruct you to do is to score each part. So you score here before you route, and then you score in here before you route. So 16 times 3 times 2 scores. Do the math. That in itself is a step that takes some time. And for the most part, that helped. But there was a couple of pieces that chipped out that they then had to go in and use some wood filler in, which doesn't quite perfectly match, but it's fine. So overall, a really interesting project. That's a lesson learned. I wouldn't use bamboo again. I would probably use cherry. I've been working a lot with walnut, so that's probably on the outs for a while. I'd probably use cherry or maple on this. I don't know if I'd use leather again. I like the looks of it though. I do like the looks of it. Just dresses it up a little bit. Those are the only two things that I would do differently. I would tackle this project next though. This is a coopered basket. And I think the interesting thing to that is that these are all 11.25 degrees, right? So kind of interesting. But in the basket, it's a 9-degree compound angle. And I think that would introduce some interesting challenge to the project. Plus, it looks great. It's in this case they're showing it in, I believe, white oak. It just looks really nice with a through tenon for the handle. It looks very nice. So I'll probably tackle that after I take a break after the holidays. I'm working on one other project that I'm wrapping up, and I'll film that and get that posted as well. So happy holidays to you. And by the time this is posted, it'll be probably right before actually Christmas. So happy holidays and thanks for watching, everybody. Hope you enjoy this project and I hope you tackle it. Again, Fine Woodworking, issue 271. Make sure you pick that up and it'll walk you right through it.